All right, we're gonna do kind of a low-tech video today because I'm trying to get it up there faster since the schedule is not what we expected today. So I'm just gonna briefly review the long division with just one example, and then I'll go through the synthetic division. So all the steps here for long division, again, starring this, making sure to put 0 as placeholders for any missing degrees. So first thing we do is we set it up with our little division sign. So there's our division sign, and we are dividing x cubed minus 7x squared plus 14 by x minus 5. So x minus 5 is our divisor. It goes out here. I had said in class that if you're missing degrees in the divisor, it's your choice whether to put the zeros in there or not. But if you choose not to when you're missing something, then you'll need to know to make sure you line up like terms as you multiply. With the dividend, it's not a choice. You won't get the right answer if you don't put zeros in. So my highest exponent in my dividend is x cubed, so I'm going to start with that. After x cubed terms should come x squared terms. I do have one of those, so minus 7x squared. After x squared terms should be my linear terms. I do not have any of those, so I need to put my placeholder of plus 0x. And then after plain x's are my constant. So I've got it all set up. I've put them in the correct division form. I have used 0 as a placeholder for the missing degree here. Then step 2, ask, what do I multiply the first term of the divisor by to get the first term of the dividend? So in this case, first term of the divisor is x, first term of the dividend is x cubed. So what do I multiply x by to get x cubed? The answer to that would be x squared. So I write the answer as it says up here above its like term. So x squared, x squared. Okay, step 3, multiply the answer we just wrote from step 2 by the divisor. It's the whole divisor, not just part of it. So I'm multiplying x squared by x minus 5, the whole thing. So x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times negative 5 is negative 5x squared. Next, step 4, change all the signs, add the columns. So change the signs. I circle them when I change them to indicate that I did, and then I'm going to add the columns. If you've done it correctly, the first terms should cancel, which these do. Then I've got negative 7x squared plus 5x squared, so that gives me negative 2x squared. Step 5, bring down the next term. So bring down my plus 0x, and repeat steps 2 through 5. So now I go back up to step 2. What do I multiply x by to get negative 2x squared? Answer to that is negative 2x, so I write it over its like term here. Once I write something on top, next step is to multiply that by the divisor. So negative 2x times x is negative 2x squared. Negative 2x times negative 5 is positive 10x. Change the signs and add the columns. These cancel. 0x plus negative 10x is negative 10x. Bring down the next term. And again, go back to step 2. What do I multiply x by to get negative 10x? It's negative 10. I write it above its like term. Then when I write something on top, the next step is to multiply it times the divisor. Negative 10 times x is negative 10x. Negative 10 times negative 5 is positive 50. Step 4, change all the signs, add the columns. Change the sign, change the sign. Add the columns. These cancel out. These give me negative 36. I am out of terms to bring down, so step 5 said repeat until you're out of terms. We are out of terms. So now, if there is a remainder, which in this case there is, if it's 0, then that means there isn't a remainder. I write it as an added or subtracted fraction. So because this is a minus, it's a subtraction here, and 36 over the divisor, it says. So x minus 5 was my divisor, and this then becomes my answer. All right, so that's a brief review if you missed or had trouble with the long division. So now we'll talk about the synthetic division. So if you missed part of class today, here is what we talked about. So all the steps are written out for you here. They don't really make a lot of sense till we see them actually put in action. But step 1 is what we call the setup step. And I've tried to draw you a picture here of how they're supposed to be set up. Most important thing to understand is that you can only use synthetic division when your divisor is in the form x minus k, meaning it's a plain old x, not an x squared, not a negative x, not a 10x, just a plain x, and then plus or minus a constant. In here, in the format, it says minus. It's okay if it's a plus, because we put our k, which is the opposite sign as the divisor, inside our box. So again, this is the setup. This right here is our box with our k. So we're going to look at example 1 and go through the steps here. So we make a little box. So you're going to do that every time. And we need to put our k in here. As I wrote up here, it should be the opposite sign as whatever's in the divisor. So it's going to be the constant, but with the opposite sign. So here, it's a minus 3 in the divisor, so I do a positive 3 in the box. Then we need the coefficients. I put them in capital letters for a reason. Coefficients of the dividend in the space to the right. There should be no variables here, really anywhere in here. It should all just be numbers. So I'm just taking the coefficients, making sure to include zeros as placeholders for any missing degrees. So I look at my dividend. It starts with x to the 4th. That's the highest exponent. Its coefficient is 1. It's 1x to the 4th. So I start with that. Just like with long division, after x to the 4th, you have to go to x cubed. So I go and I look for my coefficient of x cubed, but I don't find one because I don't have an x cubed in my dividend. So that means that I need to use 0 as a placeholder for the x cubed. After x cubed, I step down to x squared. I do have one of those. The coefficient of x squared here is negative 13. Make sure you take the sign with it. After x squareds would come plain x's. As I look, I don't see one in the dividend. This is part of the divisor. Don't use that. We're only looking at the dividend. There is no plain x, so I need 0 as a placeholder again. After plain x's come the constants, which in this case is 32. As you can see on my setup here, I've got a dashed vertical line. I call that the remainder separator. You always put it right before the last coefficient that you wrote, or before the constant. Then you put a horizontal line. Just make sure you left like a row's worth of space above it. Okay, step 1 is the most time-consuming step. It's the setup step. After step 1, everything else is super quick. Step 2, bring down the first coefficient below the line. So that means do this. Step 3, multiply the box by the bottom number recorded under the next coefficient. So box times the bottom, 3 times 1 is 3, and I recorded it under the next coefficient. Step 3 is now done. Super fast. Number 4, step 4, add the column and record it underneath the line. 0 plus 3 is 3. I recorded it under the line. Step 5, repeat steps 3 and 4 till you're out of space. So we're going to continue to do box times bottom, record, and then add the column, record. We're going to keep repeating that till we're out of space. So box times bottom, 3 times 3 is 9. Add the column, gives me negative 4. Box times bottom again. In this case, that gives me negative 12. Add the column again, also negative 12. Box times bottom, 3 times negative 12 is negative 36. Add the column, gives me -4. I'm out of space, so I've reached the end of step 5. Unlike on the previous example of long division, when we got done with that, we were just done. This is work, but it is not an answer. I don't have any variables in here. So it says in step 6, write the answer using each of the numbers below the line, so everything down here is part of my answer, as the coefficients and adding in the appropriate variables. This is so important. You have to start with the right variable to the right power. Start with the degree that is 1 below the dividend. So you look at your dividend. Mine was x to the 4th. I go 1 below that. That would be x to the 3rd. So the first number I use goes with x to the 3rd. So x cubed, 1x cubed. Then the next one should be squared, so plus 3x squared. Then minus 4x minus 12. This vertical line was the remainder separator. Because it's negative, I put a minus, so minus 4 over, and then my divisor was x minus 3. And so this would be my answer. All right, I'm going to do one more of those because those ones are super quick, unlike the long division. So, finding the quotient here. First thing I do is look at my divisor. It's x plus 4. So that means my box, I get this number, but with the opposite sign. So -4 goes in the box. Coefficients. My highest exponent is cubed. Its coefficient is a 1. So I record it first. Then, after x cubed should come x squared. I do have one of those. Its coefficient is 3. After x squared should come x's. The coefficient of my plain x term here is -10. And then finally constants, which in this case is -24. So leave my space, draw my lines, and then I start my process. Bring down the first term below the line. And then I'm going to do box times bottom, add the column. Box times bottom, add the column, over and over again until I'm out of space. Box times the bottom is -4. Adding the column gives me -1. Box times the bottom gives me +4. Adding the column gives me -6. Box times the bottom gives me 24. Adding the column gives me 0. When I go to write my answer, again, start degree 1 below the dividend. Here my dividend is x cubed, so my answer should start with x squared and then count down. So 1x squared minus 1x, which is minus x, minus 6 with a remainder of 0. If there is no remainder, you don't have to write a remainder. This would just be my answer. So you'll want to have tried B on your own. That way you can check it with mine. Make sure you did it correctly. Same thing with the other side. If you haven't done example 2, you should try that one on your own. See if you can check to get the right answer. All right, hopefully that helps with your 2 different types of polynomial division.